lives. And so it's something that we're pursuing with the government of Yemen. There are also others. The British government is also very much involved in some of these rehabilitation discussions, and hopefully we can build up a program that would give everybody confidence that in fact there was an appropriate way of treating these people when they come back from Guantanamo.
I just want to add a point to that. Is the U.S. government or the State Department doing anything to stop Congressman Peter King to actually singling out the Muslim community in the U.S.? I mean, that's going to have an effect, you know, on the U.S. foreign policy, or, you know, dealing with, you know, Muslim countries.
I think we have to lobby lawmakers.
No, but I'm just also
the State Department has much of
you know, let me finish my comments. I think the State Department also has concerns maybe with that, you know, while trying to advocate for human rights abroad, you know, the Muslim community are being singled out in the U.S. It just, you know.
He's a member of Congress, and I think that this is quite right, that actually it's an opportunity for you to speak out on these issues more than it is for us. So,
the gentleman here with the, please stand up.
Follow up with what Shakir was talking about. I recently visited Yemen, and I think really all these grievances come from one diagnosis, and that is poverty, poverty, poverty. So I really hope that the State Department, the U.S. in general, really focus on the two things. Real major projects, I guess, to go into the infrastructure, because if you interview a 10-year-old Yemeni and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Unfortunately, most of them say be out of the country. So we need to address that. Secondly, to use your leverage and the good relationship you have with the GCC countries to really lift the labor market for the Yemenis, because no nation is going to stand with an unemployment rate of 50% or more, which officially is said. So what role could you play, and the State Department could play in that, and really, instead of giving us the fish, help Yemenis to actually go out and fish for themselves? Because I think that's really going to also help us in the anti-terrorism component, and maybe a lot of that money could be saved toward that part.
That was developed and endorsed by the government of Yemen. One of the points is to create 200,000 jobs for Yemeni workers in the GCC states. The government of Yemen has had an active dialogue with the GCC governments about taking more Yemeni workers. They have certainly looked to the U.S. and other Western friends and partners to help support that initiative and to encourage the GCC states to do that. And we will talk to the GCC. At the end of the day, of course, this is a decision that the GCC states will make themselves. But we will certainly try to encourage them to move in that direction. But I'll be honest about it. I have very mixed feelings about this idea of exporting labor from Yemen. First of all, you should recognize that in 2010 there were 700,000 live births of Yemenis, and no matter how aggressive and expansive a labor program might be in the GCC, there's no way that they can absorb those kinds of numbers as those people come into the workforce. Now, it seems to me, and what I've said is, if you want to talk about GCC labor as a short-term solution to some of Yemen's problems, that's okay, I can understand that. But it's not a long-term solution. The long-term solution is developing the Yemeni economy, creating jobs in Yemen for Yemenis, and that Yemen should be exporting products and not people. And so I would like our focus to be really helping to promote the private sector development in Yemen, creating job opportunities in Yemen for Yemenis, looking at where the areas for economic growth and prosperity might be, and try to develop those. But at the same time, there's a lot of interest in building up vocational training programs in Yemen. We're not necessarily the best people in the world to do vocational training. but the Germans are, and they're very actively engaged in developing those. Where the United States does have an advantage is in the concept of junior colleges. I think that we do junior colleges better than anybody else. And in Yemen, there's a lot of interest in the junior college model. So that's something that we can work on, and something that we've already engaged in some conversations with the government about.
The most important, that cannot happen without political stability, without political reform. Anyone is not going to invest in the Yemeni economy or bring money there if there is no guarantees and there's no rule of law and so on and so forth. So all of that is really a waste of time unless we have stable, democratic institutions.
But on the other hand, having economic growth and prosperity also promotes stable political and security situations. So these things are all connected.
And the high birth rate is actually due to poverty. Birth rate is due to security.
I have a good paper which I'm going to make it available online if anybody needs an email. I wrote it years ago when I was in college on migration development. And Professor Barbachi Martin, he's one of those guys here. Some of you may not like it, but I'd like to make it available for everyone. Please, Philip.
السلام عليكم. شكرا جزيلا ونرحب بالأخ السفير ونشكره على إتاحة الفرصة هذه الليلة اللي نتحدث إليه في بعض الأمور. حقيقة وكلنا يعرف في هذا المكان إنه في مشاكل في اليمن كبيرة جدا لا نقدر نغطي عنها. في مشاكل، في بطالة، في مشاكل مياه، في فساد، يعني فساد من رأس الدولة مش منتهي من رأس، يعني فساد صعب جدا. ولكن أنا أشتي أسأل بعض الأسئلة، لأنه بعض الأخوة يتحدثوا يقولوا مجاميع من الناس يقوموا في مشاكل في المناطق الجنوبية. نحن رحنا الوحدة ومقتنعين حقيقة في الوحدة، وهي هدفنا وكانت شعارنا الصباحي في مدارسنا وفي الجيش. كنا نقول إنه تحقيق الوحدة اليمنية مسألة ضرورية. ولكن يا أخي العزيز، الوحدة غدرت في 94. حقيقة لا نقدر نغطي عن هذا الكلام. الوحدة غدرت في حرب. نحن الجنوبيين كنا دولة والأخوة في الشمال كانوا دولة. توحدنا ولكن الوحدة ماتت. أنا أشتي أسأل السفير، إذا كان مليون متظاهر، مليون في يوم واحد، هل هذا المليون يتظاهر باطل؟ مليون متظاهر. نحن في الجنوب في هذه اللحظة اللي دخلنا فيها المكان هذا الدبابات تقصف البيوت في ردفان ويقتلوا أخواننا في عدن. تمام؟ إذا كان القتل مسموح في الجنوب ومحرم في الشمال، في مظاهرات في الشمال حقيقة موجودة، لكن لن يقتل الشعب في الشمال. إذن هل هذا الجموع اللي تخرج تتظاهر، أنا بقول لك إنه 60,000 من اللي توحدوا مع النظام في الشمال في الشارع، من العمال ومن الضباط ومن أنا لحظة لو سمحت لي اسمح لي يعني اسمح لي تحدث. أنا أتكلم بأرقام. اسمح لي. إذن هل هذا البلد بلد الحرية والديمقراطية وبلد اللي تدافع عن حقوق الإنسان تريد أن يسقط من الجنوبيين مليون شهيد إلى أن يتحركوا؟ فنحن بحاجة يا علي، أنت تكلمت قلت مجامع، أنت قلت مجامع، لكن نحن نثبت إنه بالمليون يظاهروا، بالمليون. نحن نحب الوحدة اليمنية ونعشقها ونحن اللي رحنا لها. تمام؟ نحن لكن في ظلم في ظلم في ظلم في ظلم.
Opinion on that one? Again, I don't think anyone of us here would like to see one drop of human blood, either in the north, the south, or anywhere in Yemen. Nobody likes that. And I said before, the grievances of the southern government is not their grievances, everybody's. We know that.
What government are we talking about?
But again, it's the same response, and that is that the U.S. wants to see the issues of the South, the grievances of the Southern people, resolved through this process of dialogue, resolved peacefully. We don't support military operations against the Southern movement. What we want to see is Iraq participation in the national dialogue and an effort to reach an agreement within the context of the national dialogue on all of these issues.
Ambassador, why can't we have a referendum? Is there any reason why we can't have a referendum?
Gentlemen, please. Stand up. Thank you very much.
It's not his decision.
Good evening, Your Excellency. Micah Kwasnik, I'm the General Counsel to the Yemeni American Association. I have a very brief question, which is, I've had multiple members of the Yemeni American Association approach me and say that while they were in Yemen, their passport was lost, and it takes an inordinately long time to replace these documents, up to 2 months, and it places your life here in chaos. You often lose your job, and it's difficult for your family to go on. Anecdotal evidence that would suggest it takes a much shorter amount of time in other nations to replace such documents. So my basic question is, why?
It's hard to respond to that question without knowing the specific. I don't know why. Presumably it's because there was some question about the validity of the passport, of the lost passport, of the circumstances in which it was lost. Each of these cases, there is no position, there's no policy involved in these things, but the consular officer is going to look at the circumstance of each case and make a decision on the basis of that case.
Please.
First of all, I want to thank you for your presence. And you're traveling all the way from Sana'a, all the way to New York, not just Detroit. And I want to give a round of applause to all the Yemenis that are here, please. My question is very brief, very simple. I mean, I could go into the embassies. My concern is regarding the guards at the doors, is regarding the way the service is being produced in the embassy itself. And I use that question is because that's where you're stationed. And my point is, if you can give me just 5 points since you've been in office since September 17 of 2010, since you were sworn in, of what has changed, has been made since then till present. And I know it's a very short time, but it's just a question to ask.
Well, again, I think that what has changed, and it didn't change on September 10th, it started even before that, and that is a recognition that the embassy needed to address some of these issues of access and the way people were treated when they came in. So this is a process that's going on. It is an understanding. It is something that we're trying to work on and improve.
Thank you. Chair, تفضل. Gentleman here with the PA. Yes, please.
Salam alaikum. I just have a simple question. First, I thank you for giving us this opportunity. The question is, of course, one of the big topics that we hear today is terrorists in Yemen. Of course, we watch in the media and we read in the newspaper. It's just basically a big headline. And there's a person that that's known that left this country back in 2004, which is Allah Lucky, and he went to and he's hiding somewhere now. But basically, there's a chase going on. Isn't there a different approach? Because if we see Allah Lucky back 2004, 2003, he was different. And we see the more America has taken this approach, he's becoming more radical. And due to him becoming more radical, he's becoming more dangerous. So is there a different approach or dealing with him in a different way?
There's policy in a different fashion towards him.
Well, it's